there are 5 types of partnership relationship that a fintech and bank can go into. And I would just list the 5 types and see and show how Bankly had played a role, or where could be, or which part of it we've played a role. The first one, obviously, is partnership for regulatory compliance. Now, this is critical because you want to, in using a lean model, you want to test out. I like to say that I'm a scientist at art, so I had to use the hypothesis testing model. So I had to say, this is the hypothesis question. Now, what am I going to see in the market? Getting the right regulatory license at the time when you're still testing, you don't even know what this is. You don't even know what specific license it will evolve into. And licensing takes time. So one of the things we did was to approach a bank and said, this is what we are attempting to do, and this is the value for you. It has to be symbiotic. So we said, this is the value for you, and this is how we would play in sharing the results that we got. Now, in that relationship, of course, we wanted to move quickly into the market. The bank who knew that we will be agile in moving quickly into the market, and the hunger, they could leverage it to understand what's possible in this space. Now, they were quite regulatory. They are regulated, so they could be almost like a regulatory sandbox, more like holding our hands and telling us, this is what you are allowed to do, this is what you are not allowed to do. And when it's time to answer to the regulators, they are able to be the buffer to say, oh, this is what we've allowed them to do. And that was what saved us. And so I'm staying a lot on this one, because that's the only way to get something up from zero to nothing. And it's important because I've had people in the space who wanted to step in and build something. And sometimes during COVID especially, it took 2 years to get the license, and life has moved on. Life has moved on from what they wanted to do. And by the time the license came, they're like, you know what? I was going to live in Nigeria before, I'm moving to Canada. Oh, my child now has. So things has moved. So imagine if I had to wait for that. That's what I'm saying, that's one of the most crucial things. The second one is absolutely vendor relationship. So when we moved past that, we moved into a vendor relationship. What did we do? We use their API. So they already have a technology infrastructure. As much as we were building internally, it was important that we go, speed to market is important. So we use their APIs to power wallet creation, use their APIs for transfers, use their APIs for whatever services. And it's a win-win. They charge us for it. We put a slight markup. The share of the market, the share of the pie at that time, typically sometimes stays with the bank. But I would also like to say it's quite important. I've learned that even in a partner relationship I also did POS terminal partnership, but it's important. One of the biggest lessons I learned is in partnerships, there's a power dynamic. You could flag me if my time is running out. In partnerships, there's a power dynamic, and oftentimes the bank has more power than the fintech, at least at the early stage. And so one of the things I learned was to make sure you test out. You have a pilot, even if it's 30 days before you sign that contract. Now I'm talking to fintechs, banks, because one of the things when we launched, when we pivoted to agency banking in 2020, March 2020, before just as COVID was hitting, was when we deployed the first 100 terminals into the market. And if I hadn't tested with 100 terminals, if I had signed the contract with whatever partner I was working with at that time, it would have been brutal. I wouldn't have been able to get out of something that would have killed the company. So at the end of the day, also remember that the bank is solving for itself. You also have to solve for yourself. They have their stakeholders might not be the same as yours. And so it was important. So after we tested out with 100 terminals, and then I was able to quickly flag. I haven't done that before. So that learning process let me flag clauses in the contract that would not fly. And that literally saved the company. I think three other most important, I'll say, strategic investment. We haven't seen beyond place things like we haven't seen bank fintech strategic investment, and I think it's important. Strategic investment because banks to remain appealing and competitive, they need to move into an agile customer-centric organizations. Like you see, even the telcos are trying to become a fintech at heart. But becoming it is not just about branding, it's about the culture from the inside, it's about the people. And so sometimes that strategic investment is a pipeline to a bit of a, we need to see such mergers and acquisition within the space. It's a pipeline to actually hire some of those talents so that they can come to change things from within. And I think that's something we should be looking forward to in the space. And finally, I would say research and product to market collaboration. But oftentimes, one of the challenges there is always a conflicting goal, what the fintech wants and what the bank wants. At the end of it, sometimes they want the same thing, they want the customer. And so we see less of that collaboration of product to market, and that becomes difficult. I think finally is also within that product to market is a fintech being able to leverage the physical infrastructure of an existing bank. But I think what's important is I'm just listing out this in rounding up, I'm just listing out this critical portions of where a fintech and a bank, from my experience, can move quickly to market and solve the challenges of bringing in or solving the challenge of the customer in a way that is symbiotic, and make sure that fintech survives and also make sure that the bank remains competitive. Thank you.